Welcome to The Authority Show, where we turn insight into impact.
We are live today with Marta, and it's an honor to have you here with us. I think that you have a really interesting backstory and experience to share with me and all the listeners. But please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your amazing achievements.
Thank you very much, Karl, for having me today in the podcast. It's a pleasure to having this chance of speaking with you. My name is Marta De Zavala, and I am a Spanish entrepreneur living in Dubai. I launched my first business 1.5 years ago, and it's a cybersecurity firm called Cysuite Group. Before that, I was a cybersecurity consultant for big consulting firms, multinational consulting firms, both in Europe and in the GCC, specifically in Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. My background is a bit of a mix. I like to think of myself as a hybrid profile because I come from business. So I studied business, started my career in technological sales, and then I decided to invest my time and money in a cybersecurity master's degree. That allowed me to then switch towards consulting, start traveling the world with cybersecurity consulting, advising governments and so on. And after that, eventually launching my firm. So that's me
Nice.
at a glance. But yeah, as you can see, I'm not an engineer in origin, but I work with them a lot, you know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's great.
I try to put the business sense into technology and cybersecurity specifically, right? I think that a lot of businesses out there have complied with cybersecurity out of regulatory requirements, but there is a business need to do that at the strategic level. And that's what I try to do in a way of bridging the gap between communicating among business teams and technology teams in corporations.
Yeah, I think that is super interesting. And I know that you have a couple of topics that we'll cover. But before that, what you just said is something that most people don't really think of, and that's bridging the gap. Bridging the gap is something that we all need to understand the implications around, because we come with different experience, knowledge, education, and so on. And that puts us in that classical box, the box that I keep on talking and mentioning in these episodes. And with that, there are boundaries, quite fixed boundaries, that limits us in understanding what the people in the other box are actually talking about. And that's where that bridge is so much needed, but also it's so much more, because the bridge itself can't just go from one box to the other box. It has to go into the box to add value. It needs to understand where someone's coming from and why they have this opinion, need, or requirement, or problem. And just by expressing the actual need, you're not going to solve that problem.
Exactly. And you see that, I think, especially in large corporations, we'll have our own departments, KPIs, and it's very tunnel vision sometimes, because we tend to work on silos, to be focused on what we are supposed to do, right? So there's a lot of misunderstandings and frictions among certain teams. And I would say that our aim, as part of our aim in the firm, is to be able to come as a layer that is able to penetrate in the different silos and in the different teams and unify in a common goal for security, prevention, and in the end, long-term sustainability of the business eventually as a third party, right? And just provide with this information to the teams so they are able to understand each other, no matter if you come from finance or if you work in IT or if you work in legal, you are all united by cybersecurity, because you all receive emails, you all have bank accounts, you all have maybe kids at home or parents or grandparents that were scammed last week, you know? So cybersecurity is part of our daily lives. And so I think if we address it from the daily lives of people and the usability or the more practical aspect of it, it will then come to the corporate world because people will use it in their daily lives, right? So this is kind of the key, actually, for starting then the conversation with the teams, you know?
Yeah.
You target the daily lives of people, and that's something that is common to everyone or almost everyone. And through that rhetoric, then people start to understand each other, regardless of the team they're from or the team they're working in the corporation, right? So
Yeah.
it's a different approach, but I think it's the key, because it's the only common ground that we can find that is not related to your background and your box, the box you were talking
Yeah.
about, right?
Yeah. I do love this angle, because what we're talking about now is not going to the CXOs and deciding like we need to secure this thing, whatever it is, or we need to improve the security layers on these things. Instead, what you're saying is like, maybe we should start talking to our children and talk to them about cybersecurity and security with the connected devices. And
Exactly.
with that, start to actually reason rather than implementing decisions and regulations, reason around how I can actually understand the impact of not taking care of these things.
Exactly.
And maybe
Exactly.
the easiest way is to look at our children, because those are the people that we care the most about, and make sure that they feel like they understand more of their everyday life, because their everyday life is so much more connected than your or mine life. They socialize in a totally different way using social media. They communicate not by making phone calls, but by sending messages, voice messages or text messages. Like, we grew up with actually talking to our friends, and if we could not reach them by phone, we were lost because we didn't have cell phones. Like, if we circle back from where we grew up, really.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because last year we actually published a book as a firm that is called Cybersecurity for Families.
oh,
And
nice.
to every client we go to, we gift it to the employees, or we just include it as part of our projects, right? Because
That's great.
what we're talking about, and here we're very aligned, is that if we start at home, and there's a lot of work to be done there. Actually, the way we've developed it is from a psychological perspective
Yeah.
as well, not from the theory of cybersecurity. Because,
No.
of course, imposing boundaries and limits just for
Yeah.
the sake of security and privacy creates a lot of friction as well in the family, right? So
Yeah.
we work together with a psychologist to deliver or to develop a methodology that actually keeps into account how you have to introduce cybersecurity in the family for the different age groups, right? It's not
Yeah.
the same to talk about cybersecurity to kids than talking about it to teenagers or adults or grandparents, right? So what we wanted was to cover all the main age groups from a psychological angle that allows it to implement it without these frictions in the family, right? So we did that as a way of showing also that our angle targets more the day-to-day of families and the individual in the end.
Yeah.
And this is interesting as well, because there's a lot of conversation around the human risk in corporations, right? And you see that more than 90% of the successful cyber attacks target humans, and they actually are able to penetrate the network and cause all the damage in the firm, right? So you can say that the weakest piece of the chain is the human being.
Yeah.
But what if we train enough the human being in the right way, not just to comply with the requirement, and we make cybersecurity become part of our culture and part of what we teach our kids at home and what we teach our kids at school, and we transform that human being into our best ambassador and our best shield, let's say, when they come into the company, because they've integrated it so much in their day-to-day that they will know how to act also at the workplace, right? So it's a little bit the long-term aspiration that we have to train people and to make people more aware of cybersecurity, right? And it will pay off, because it will be part of the company eventually as well. So
exactly. So it's a long-term initiative, and maybe that initiative is not for the company, but in a way for the greater good.
Yeah.
It's something that you bring with you, like for the rest of your life. Common sense, gut feeling, and trusting your first thought are around, should I do this or should I not?
Exactly. And you keep it with you in whatever firm you go to. It's not something firm specific. It's your life. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a topic that I find extremely interesting and we can talk for hours about, and especially the connection with when people talk about cybersecurity and there's people listening like, okay, this is going to be boring. It's going to be something that I don't understand. But just as you pointed out, cybersecurity is so much more. It's to a very large extent connected to social engineering, where we actually talk to people and get them to give us access that they should not give us. We social engineer them around a current situation where I'm talking to someone and I say that I have this problem, I need your help. You're the only one that can help me because of this and that. Or acting as if there's a situation where, like, for example, we have seen examples of where people use voice synthesizing tools to impersonate other people, like children, and having those recordings or made up recordings, making phone calls to parents and saying, oh, I'm in this accident, I need you to transfer money right now because of this and that.
Yeah, we've seen so many cases of this, especially with the rise of AI, right?
Yeah.
AI is not something new in the world, but it's something that was standardized a couple of years ago, and everyone has access to it now. And I think we now understand it better, the general public, I mean, and also the cyber criminals, right? We have to bear in mind that technology is great, but also cyber criminals have access to it. And we've seen such a rise of these type of frauds and scams that target people that maybe don't have the resources to understand or to identify well what's a scam and what's not. We also see it in corporations with the provider's fraud, which is the cyber attacker intercepts your communications with your provider, and then they trick you into changing the IBAN or the account number in which you have to transfer them the money at the end of the month. And we're talking here about hundreds of thousands of dollars that are maybe just lost, to a scam like this. So it's boosted by the AI and new technologies that are coming out. So it's more important than ever for people to be aware and for people to have the tools and the knowledge so they can at least identify and have a protocol in place, right? Because you can identify, but then what do you do? It's important that companies implement protocols of action, right? And know what to do with this type of situation. So yeah.
Yeah, I followed the story some time back where someone social engineered a telecom provider to actually get that store clerk to create a new SIM because that individual said, I lost my phone and I really, really need to make a phone call to my parents and so on and so on. And that person just wanted to be kind and solve the problem. So he created a new SIM for this individual, and that SIM was obviously not owned by the person that was doing this hack or social engineering, and that resulted in him or her actually getting access to someone else's crypto wallet and just made a password reset and got the confirmation key to that SIM card and by SMS, and all of a sudden could just empty that crypto wallet.
Yeah. And then, you're left there. There's no, you can try to track these people. You can try to place a complaint or the police try to prosecute, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And these people know exactly how to avoid it. So it's better preventing than suffering the consequences, right? So that's where I think the focus should be moving forward with cybersecurity. Prevent as much as possible and communication protocols in place.
Yeah. And if we look back a little bit again, we've been talking about passwords for such a long time and password length and so on. We came to a point where if you have a system that you really want to secure, then you need to have a password that's super complicated and it should be printed on a paper, not stored in a digital format anywhere. And then that password should be locked into a safe and only one person have access to the physical safe. Yes, but then the result is that password will most probably be written down by hand on a note somewhere under a desk or a keyboard, and people will find ways to make it more convenient. And then we have made an endless problem of overcomplicating and over protecting access. So, It's
Yeah,
it's not an easy thing. Yeah.
It's not efficient. In theory, yes, we all have a safe and we all put there in written our passwords. Even we might want to break the password in 3 and then we keep them in 3 separate places.
Yeah.
And when we need it, we just go but that doesn't work in real life, right?
No.
It's,
No.
and people just, and it's a way of perceiving cybersecurity as a business blocker, right? Or operations blocker. Like if it's so complicated for me to keep up with this, prevention measures, then I'd rather just not follow them and just get done with my day, right? So it's difficult. It's difficult. And I think the way for these to become better is that we give the knowledge to the individuals, but then the technology that works in the back end is the one that has to be as effective as possible, right?
Yeah.
And this brings me to a very interesting topic that maybe some people have started to hear about, because Google made an announcement last week about quantum computing developments and so on. And I was recently in Peru, actually, giving a conference about post-quantum security.
Nice.
And it is very important that before talking about post-quantum, we talk about quantum, right? We need to understand still what quantum is. I mean, we're not physicists or physicists. It's very, it's a very wide topic and very, very interesting, but also very complex. But there's already solutions, and we are actually working towards that. We're hoping at launching a post-quantum security product this year, this 2025 year. And the way technology is going is exactly towards that prevention.
Yep.
With very strong technology like post-quantum security, that is post-quantum cryptography. Okay.
Yep.
And providing with these powerful tools to the company or to the individual, so the individual can have a more maybe operational efficient life.
Yeah.
You want to have maybe so many passwords and, so many things to keep in mind, besides, of course, the normal awareness and understanding of what could be a scam and what not. But the idea is to provide a technology that is powerful enough for you to sleep tight at night. So putting the emphasis in the backend systems with your general awareness, it will be enough for your data to be protected, because a post-quantum security tool will protect it, right? So This is a very interesting topic right now. I think we're going to see a lot of these in 2025, because with the advancements of quantum computing, then the next question is, how are we going to protect our systems from a quantum-powered cyber attack, right? Currently, we'll just decrypt all the cryptography or the systems that are encrypted with current cryptography algorithms, right? So what's next there? I think as cybersecurity professionals, we tend to always look at the worst case scenario. We have to be very conservative, right? When it comes to talking to clients and doing recommendations. We have that in mind. But definitely we're going to see a lot of that coming this year and in the next years, of course. And it's going to be a very interesting conversation, because I think it's going to attract a lot of attention, because quantum is very interesting as a topic. And maybe it's the time for people to become also more interested in cybersecurity, So I would see it also as an opportunity in that aspect for people to be more interested in cybersecurity in general.
Yeah, I think that most people are starting to be aware of artificial intelligence, the impact it has, and to also be concerned, afraid, and based on the lack of knowledge that many people have. With quantum computing, most people have not followed this at all, because it's very complicated at first. It's not easy to actually grasp and understand what it means. But I've been following this for a couple of years already. It's extremely interesting.
Great, Karl.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's great.
But it's extremely interesting. It's really, again, about the box. With quantum computing, there is no box at the same time as there is a box, and there are multiple boxes in the same space. That's the easiest way to explain it. Like one article I saw, I think it's about 5 weeks ago or something like that now, is that in China, in one of the labs around quantum computing, they managed to break military-grade encryption.
There you go.
Yes. And military grade encryption is not something that you break in a year or 100 years or even 1,000 years, depending on what it is that you have encrypted and how big data set it is that you're trying to access. It's a couple of thousand years. I don't know the exact numbers. I won't even try to say it. But just imagine coming from a point of view where it takes a couple of thousand years to break encryption to using quantum computing, and it's either locked or it's open. Like, those are the two states that from a quantum point of view, we just need to figure out which page shows us the open state. Because there is a page that shows us the open state.
Yeah.
We don't need to break it.
Yeah. And this is if you bring it like this, a lot of people would panic, right? Because it's like, how are we going to protect ourselves? And what's next, right? Is it going to be chaos in the world? Because everything is going to be out, not only from a technology perspective, also from secrets perspective, right? There will be some very highly sensitive topics related to politics, lawsuits, a lot of information and intelligence that won't be able to be protected anymore, right? Not that I'm a big fan of keeping secrets, especially...
Yeah, but there are some things that we need to protect. Maybe we don't need to keep it secret, but we need to protect. Like, for example, I was in contact with Visa and MasterCard about how to protect transactions so that they are not tampered with. And then we get back to the entire thing connected to blockchain, and like, maybe we can't protect it, but maybe we can validate it. If we can't have an encryption algorithm that actually is safe any longer, then we're getting to the point where we need to protect it by knowing what's happened along the route. And that's crypto and blockchain.
Maybe I should talk to Visa and MasterCard, by the way, if they're having these doubts. We have to talk to them.
Yeah.
But that's a good point as well. We have currently other technologies that allow us to do other things that are complementary to protecting the data, right? And probably a big thing for them is validating, as you were saying, the transactions are happening and actually legit, and at least they track them, right? And understand who's doing what, and it gets registered in the blockchain. So you can play with that as an insurance, that at least you're mitigating the risk of not having legit transactions or this sort of thing. So I think it's a time to be creative as well. I'm thinking outside the box. Now that we're talking about all these boxes, it's time to think outside the box and become creative, right? I always like to talk about this news that I read some years ago when the president of France hired a novelist to help them with their national defense strategy.
Oh.
Because they wanted to think of all the possible scenarios that probably were not very likely to happen, but they wanted to have everything covered, right, from a creative point of view. And this was pre-COVID, so probably even before the pandemic, one of those scenarios was a global pandemic, I'm sure one of the scenarios was that. And they did that to be able to come up with as many scenarios as possible to be covered, right? And to have a plan of action. And I think in this case, with all these advancements of technology, companies that want to be competitive and always on the edge of innovation and just with a better probably market under their umbrella, let's say, they have to become creative and understand that we may not have all the answers today, but we have a lot of tools currently that can help us in many ways if we're creative enough, right? So yeah,
definitely. Oh, wow.
Interesting.
There are so many interesting things that we need to talk about, but we also need to get back to your topics. What is it that you think that we should focus on in today's conversation? Because we already covered so much space that I think will both educate our listeners, but also inspire everyone to actually think a little bit more about their own security from an IT perspective.
Yeah. So I think we've covered the most cybersecurity related topics. And here I think we could go 4 hours because there's a lot of things that are part of the corporate world, right? There's also a very interesting aspect of it that I kind of mentioned it before, which is the crisis management and how communication and PR enters also in the field of cybersecurity when it comes to reacting of cyber attacks that are happening in our organization, right? And it's not only a technical responsibility, but also a responsibility with our users, with our clients, on how we communicate with them on social media. How are we going to incentivize maybe the loss of incentivize them after the loss of operations? There's another story, and then we jump to another topic, but there's another story that I remember. It was a couple of years ago already. Time flies. So I think it was a couple of years ago. One of the biggest, largest casinos in Las Vegas was cyber attacked through social engineering, right?
Yeah.
They got information of one of the employees on LinkedIn. So they went on LinkedIn, understood everything they could about this person, and then they impersonated him with their IT support internally. And
I think it was during DEF CON, if I remember, or maybe there's several incidents.
Yeah, no, there were several incidents, and actually they were sustained in time. So maybe it was September, I think. But yeah. Anyways, you can imagine one of the biggest casinos in Las Vegas, hotel chain as well. They got cyber attacked, and for 10 days they were not able to process any bookings, any payments. The guests couldn't access their rooms. They had to go with a physical key to open the rooms one by one of the guests. So we're not talking only about the loss of those bookings that couldn't be processed, right? We're talking about reputational loss. We're talking about the revamping of the systems loss and all that money that goes into it, right?
And trust connection to the brand, which is something that is something we quite often forget to measure.
Yeah. It's difficult to measure. But it's important in today's world because, reviews are everything. People are getting more picky on how your data are processed because we have more information and more rights, right? So this is very important. And it's this point where I wanted to arrive to. It's how did they react to that cyber attack? Did they put a team of PR to talk with the guests? Did they offer them free nights next year if they want to stay there? I didn't see much of that initiative on how they would communicate to the outside world, how they were handling things, right? Because they have responsibilities on how to communicate to the authorities, and there's a plan for that, right? A protocol. But for your users, for the clients, how are you compensating for that, right? So, and this comes from something that has nothing to do with IT. This has to do with strategy, communications, PR. So it's a cyber incident that needs involvement of the whole organization in the end, So I think this is just, I just wanted to portray this example as well, because I think it's interesting to see it also from angle. But I think we can also maybe talk about entrepreneurship in Dubai or in general.
Yeah, for sure.
Cybersecurity, or as a woman, I don't know.
I love all those topics. But before we leave the incident that you mentioned, DEF CON is the largest cybersecurity conference in the world. It's been going on for decades, but it's really something that's been around for a very, very long time from an IT point of view in terms of time. But they have had some challenges over the years. And as a result of that, during the conference week, there are a bunch of hotels that basically turn off parts of their system or parts of their infrastructure, like everything connected to salaries, everything connected to any of these sensitive topics. They physically disconnect and turn off because it's a hotspot for everyone within security to actually sort of, not as a fist fight, but as a bragging point or post, see how far they can get into these systems. And we know this is a city that is built around money, that's built around transactions. So it's an interesting place to hold this type of conference. It's also interesting to see what's going on every year in terms of all the challenges and every hoops and loops and obstacles that are put up by big companies to actually see if you can break into their products.
Yeah. Also the bug bounty type of prices that you get, definitely. And I think you mentioned something very interesting, which is the turn off of the systems. Sometimes we think that cybersecurity is a abstract, right? And hence it's harder for us to understand or maybe be more aware. And, it's because we don't see it. But then we see its correlation with physical security.
Yeah.
And there's lots of examples of that. But the turn off of systems, the turn off of hotel keys, and so on. A great example for us to understand the correlation or the relation that exists between logical security or cybersecurity and the physical one, right? So that's also very important. And I think we need to understand better that everything cyber has a relation in the physical world as well.
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
So, yeah.
But let's move on to the topic of entrepreneurship and maybe focus in a little bit on Dubai and the region, but also how you experience it from your point of view as a business leader that is not from the region and all the other angles that we come into.
Yeah, great. So it's true that I didn't come to Dubai straight to launch my business, right? So I got the chance to spend some time in the region. And I think that's very important when you want to do such move or of launching your own business in a different country, right? And especially in a region that you may not have visited before or that you're not familiarized with. So I think that was a very important part for me. I had the chance of spending almost 2 years working between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and living there. That gave me not only the knowledge of the region, but also some connections that would help me kickstart the business and some feedback, right, of how to do things and also to know how businesses are done in this part of the world, because we might want to launch and we may have all the ideas, but you also need to understand that in different regions you have to work differently. When I decided to launch, I think I made sure that I had a runway of a year, in which I took the worst case scenario and said, imagine you don't earn a dime for 12 months. Are you able to sustain yourself in a city like Dubai, right? And Dubai is an expensive city if you want it to be, but you can also save a lot of money. It depends on your lifestyle. It is expensive, but then for instance, you compare the rent prices and what you get for those rent prices to rent prices in Europe, where I'm from, and it's not that expensive. There's ways for saving money and do things in a way that allows you to have that runway. If you have your income as your main source of revenue, of course, you may have a different situation, right? So I made sure that I had that runway because I didn't want to make decisions based on me running out of money, right?
So you were bootstrapping yourself. So for people not following, the concept of runway is basically I have this amount of money and it will run out in so long time. So you were actually saving up to start your own business and you were not looking for external funding and had enough in your pockets to actually fund yourself for up to a year.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason for this is I started with a services company, right? With services, I feel it's easier to break even, especially if you are the first employee for those services, which was my case, right? So I started as a cybersecurity consulting firm, and then I started adding more people to the team that had the skills that I was lacking. So as you can imagine, coming from business and then cybersecurity, my strength is not the technical skills. I understand them. I can tell you about them, but then I need someone to execute that, So I created a team around me and we're still selling services as our main source of revenue for the company that now allows us to reinvest in product, right? So we've reached a point in which we have an MVP ready to test, and to bring to the market. But definitely for this product that I was talking about on post-quantum security, our idea is to raise some capital, diverting it from the bootstrapping. We'll keep doing the services part because it's something that's, we've grown into and we have clients and the market is there and there's a lot to do. But for the product, probably we'll raise some capital because it's the way to do it faster, right?
Of course.
But definitely something I've learned because I had different opportunities to also not bootstrapping especially at the beginning, because you meet a lot of people there, and I mean, people want to do business and you have opportunities and so on. And I remember someone gave me a very good advice, which was bootstrap as much as you can. Then if you need the money, go to the bank and ask for a loan. Once you pay the loan, you're done with the bank. The last resort, if you're not building a deep tech product or something like this, it has to be to give up your equity, because your equity is something that is uncapped eventually, right? The returns on equity could be uncapped. So you have to be very careful at the beginning. Maybe this is something that I would advise now if I talk to other people thinking of launching their business and so on. I think it was definitely the best advice I've received. And I agree with it, because my company now has nothing to do with my company of 1 year ago or 1.5 years ago. And so in that sense, I would definitely do it all over again if I had the chance, and not asking for any money externally until I have the right product to go to market, and that's it. So definitely that was a very good advice. But on the other side of things, and this is agnostic to your product or your company or anything, definitely the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Dubai have an ecosystem of attraction for startups and founders that I haven't seen in many other places, because they make things very easy for you to set up. It's true also that there's a lot of intermediaries if you are unaware of how to do things by yourself. But once you have that information and you learn how to do it, then it's very easy. And here I have an example, because I have 2 companies in Dubai. I have the cybersecurity firm, and then I also have a headhunting firm that searches for cybersecurity profiles and so on. The first one took me to launch 1 month, because I had to learn how to do everything, where to do it. You have the free zones, you have the mainland. There's different options to set up your business there. So the learning took me 1 month to set up. Already less than what it would have taken me in Spain, for instance. Okay. But the second one, Karl, it took me 2 days to set up, including the bank account. Okay. The corporate bank account. So,
which is an important detail here, because that is something that most people don't realize. Starting a company here in Dubai is rather easy. But then to get a bank account is not as easy. So for many people coming here to start their business, one of the biggest challenges is actually to get a bank account, which us coming from Europe, very strange, because getting a bank account in Europe, you just walk into a bank or you use an app and you start a bank account in a couple of seconds.
They give them away, right? Like candies. But definitely, if anybody listening is interested in knowing like how, to get a bank account and so on. I mean, I don't want to do advertising here of any brand specifically, but I can tell them about my personal experience. And I think also in that aspect, the UAE is progressing in the right path.
Definitely.
And they're making it easier for entrepreneurs to come in. So it's a very interesting place. I see that the market is less mature in many aspects compared to Europe and the US specifically, which gives us opportunities. Right? There's opportunity to fill the gaps, to help transition into a more mature way of doing things. So where some people might see it as a setback, or a setback, and as a way of, okay, maybe I don't want to go to that market because it's not that mature. It's actually a great opportunity to try and add your value there.
And Dubai is just one part of UAE, but Dubai is big enough as a city to launch a product. If you have something that is a SaaS, or if it's a product where you deliver physical products and so on, like there is enough amount of potential customers within the city to make it a good starting point. While there are many other cities in Europe that are smaller, that makes it more difficult for you to actually see if your product is a good fit for the market.
Yeah. And related to this, Karl, I think it's very interesting what you said, because the reason for this, I think, is the culture. What I see in the UAE is that they're willing to try things out.
Yeah.
Because they they don't have all these legacy systems, that have been running there for decades, and then they have to, if they want to try something, they do it,
Yep.
and then they fail fast,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's very good.
There's an eagerness, but it's an appetite as well. And that appetite is curious. Like they are interested in staying in the forefront, and for that to be possible, they need to actually, as you say, be open to fail fast.
Yeah. They definitely want to be at the top of everything. Also technology, tourism, finance. This definitely creates this, as you're saying, appetite and this culture of trying things and bringing things to test, So it's a great testing field, definitely, for products. And also for, making a product successful. So, and then you can maybe jump to other bigger markets if you have validated your product first,
Absolutely.
So definitely very interesting.
Yeah, and there's
also
a support ecosystem as well. It's not just that it's easy. It's also that you will get some support here. And that is something that they have been working very hard on, especially the last year, I would say, where they're starting to see that there is a challenge going on from Saudi as well, where Saudi see the opportunity of encouraging entrepreneurs and the ecosystem itself to actually move their business to Saudi. So before Dubai was sort of its own playground, there was not much competition in the region, but now we see that for sure in the region from Saudi, and it's going to be interesting to see how, as I like to see it, how these two organizations, because it's easier to look at it as an organization rather than a country, how they complement each other, like what they choose to be their competitive edge in comparison.
I think it's very interesting also what you're saying, because competition brings innovation and boosts efficiencies, right? So I think it's good actually that Saudi is entering the entrepreneurship field, and they're now creating these free zones for people to come and feel more comfortable, right? And launching their business. If I'm not mistaken, also, Saudi is willing to help you bring your company and your product abroad with the Saudi watermark, let's say, of course. But they will give you the boost, if you decide to register your company there. If you want to target other markets, you will go with the Saudi Arabia watermark, but they're willing to give you that opportunity as well, So for some people, that could be the biggest benefit, because they really want to go to other markets, and Saudi can give you that support, the one that you were talking about. What's the UAE going to do about it? Are they going to also offer this eventually? So definitely very interesting what you were saying, Karl. And I think this is alone a good reason to think about moving to the region and start your business. Besides, of course, also the amazing tax regime that is there for entrepreneurs, right? Compared to other countries, it's much more loose. So that's a great option as well.
There's another topic here that you mentioned that I know that many of our listeners are very curious about. And there is a misconception, I think, to quite a large extent, and that is how welcoming it is for you as a woman in this region. Because we have a misunderstanding to quite large extent about the flexibility that actually is here in Dubai, and the flexibility that is being brought from Saudi as well, where they are really pushing their own boundaries to make it more convenient and welcoming. So where are you, and what are your experience and opinions on that?
Yeah. So this is a question that I get asked so much, and I think it's normal, right? Even myself, when almost 4 years ago or 3 years ago, I went to Saudi to work for the first time. I remember the first day or the day before taking the flight, I was like, okay, what is it going to be like? Like,
you
I
had
was
not
nervous.
been there even?
No. So I went there to work.
Yeah. Without even
from one
visiting.
day to I hadn't visited Saudi or
Interesting.
anything. I had some people around me that had been there, but they were all male, So I was a bit conscious about that. But I always say this, and I think it's a very nice anecdote. I've been working with large American consulting firms, North American consulting firms. And I can tell you this, my clients in Saudi treated me better as a woman, as a professional woman, than my so known and so well-known, large, progressive North American firms. And this is true. And I know it might have been my case because I always worked with financial services institutions.
Yeah.
And this is a rather advanced type of, or non-legacy in Saudi type of sector. I'm sure if I had worked in oil and gas or, any other more traditional sector, maybe my experience would have been different because I know of these stories as well. But what I can tell you is that I felt so much appreciated in Saudi and so much welcomed and so much respected that all these stereotypes that I had before going there were gone, once I started working there. That's Saudi. And I think Saudi still has a lot of things that they're working on in terms of openness to tourism and people from abroad, but they're definitely getting there, you know, and you see all these projects and all these investments they're doing in tourism just open to the public and so on. I think we will get there.
Definitely. I totally agree. In my experience with the Saudis, obviously I come from a different point of view. For me as a foreigner, it is much more open than I thought it would be. And I've been to Saudi a number of times, and I really enjoy going there and working there because they have, again, we get back to appetite. They have such an appetite to go into this transition that they're going from and for, and they have the support. It's not that it's driven by entrepreneurs or anything like that. It's driven by the king.
Yeah.
So it's supported from top up and motivated to actually go through these modernizing transition stages, which is amazing. And that is something that many people around the world are not aware of at all.
Yeah. And it's a unique thing.
Yes.
Tell any other country or any other region, if we want to include there the UAE, that is going through such a strong transition with such a powerful vision and has actually the means to do it. They have the money to execute all these projects and they have the strategy and they believe in it and then they're going for it. I don't know of any other country in the world that's doing this.
No,
right? So
I totally agree.
It's a very unique environment, very unique.
Extremely interesting. And all the other parts of the world are in one way or another in an internal conflict. There are countries that are not conflict countries, definitely, but there is society conflict in a way. And in Saudi, I see a very, very positive overall attitude towards all of the advancements that's being done. Yeah.
That's another type of social engineering that we're talking about.
That's true.
But yeah, definitely. That's why I think it's so inspiring, you know, to see all these things happening. And I have another anecdote, and is that I used to take the flight every Sunday at 7 a.m. from Dubai to Riyadh to work there until Thursday, because in Riyadh and in Saudi, you have the Muslim week, right? Which is from Sunday to Thursday. So I used to take the flight 7 a.m. You can imagine the flight full of consultants and everyone going there just to work. You know, you don't get tourists on these type of flights. But think of a Boeing 777 filled by people doing business. I did such an amazing network in my flight.
Yeah.
More interesting people on these flights than in any other conference I've been to. You know, people go there for
love
business.
that. The positive attitude towards that.
And I'm a talker on plane sometimes. So yeah, I'm that type of person. So that would give me the opportunity, you know, to meet some people and make some business actually. So it's really good. But yeah. Then I just wanted to mention that, I mean, this is about Saudi and I didn't launch my business in Saudi, right? I launched it in the UAE. In the UAE, I didn't feel any type of limitation whatsoever because I'm a woman, you know, at least that I know of. Maybe some people didn't come to me to ask me for business because of this, but I will never know, you know, and that's something you have to live with. And maybe I'm a woman, but maybe they won't go to you for something else. And these are stereotypes and prejudgments of people, you know, it's part of the game, but at least explicitly, I didn't have any limitation. And I'm not having problems in the business because of
Yeah.
it, the business going well, touch wood, but I didn't feel any of that sort of thing, and I think this is important for other females that might be wanting to launch a business and thinking of Dubai and not be very sure about what to expect there,
Yeah. But also those stereotypes, the naysayers or the people that are not coming with an open mind, they exist all over the world.
Exactly.
So,
and it's not gender specific, it can be nationality, it can be, I don't know, skin tone,
exactly.
like people act like this for every reason, but coming to this as a specific concern that some people may have, not at all a concern, it's a fantastic environment for a woman, and the safest, I would say, compared now to other European cities.
Yes.
The safest.
Yeah.
I run, and I like running, and I can go on a run at any given time in the day, including midnight. Nothing is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's
quite amazing. And given that we come from Europe and you sort of are, wherever you go, you always have a little bit of a situation where you try to measure the room in a way. Like, is this a situation? Here, you don't have that security awareness because you don't need it. Like everywhere else, you need to have a little bit of a street smart attitude.
Yeah.
Like if you were to tell someone that you're living in London and you're going for a run in the middle of the night, everybody would think that that's not so wise to say it in a nice way.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get spoiled in that aspect, and then you come back to Europe, and then you have to remember to keep an eye on my phone, to keep an eye on my bag, to keep an eye on myself. But
exactly.
But
you get very relaxed in that sense, and that's both good and bad, because as we travel, you need to remind yourself, like, okay, so I'm actually leaving now. I need to keep track of my stuff, otherwise I will not have my stuff.
Yeah.
They will be gone.
And then you come to time and you have people plugging their phones to charge and leaving them there for an hour while they go strolling the mall, you know, and so it's shocking, but
it is. In the beginning, it really is shocking, and you see handbags being left on tables in open spaces, and like, who owns that handbag? Is it a bomb? Like, no.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, that's so suspicious. You're like,
you're
right.
Yeah.
But But well, as a final message of this section, if you think about coming to Dubai, first reach out if you have doubts. I'm open to talking to people if they're thinking about it. I have actually a small community where other entrepreneurs help each other understand how to navigate things. It's a free community, so everyone can just help there and add their value or their concerns. And second, do it. If you're thinking about moving to the region, now is the right time.
Yeah. But also, as you pointed out earlier, plan for a runway. Have a bit of money because it will take you some time to understand how to get things going here. It is a different place. Things work slightly differently, but if you already have a startup and you can work remotely, then this is a great place to be.
Yeah. Absolutely, Karl.
Yeah, amazing. That's some really good closing notes. I really enjoyed this conversation with you, and I think that we have covered a lot of ground of interesting topics and bits and pieces that everyone can learn from.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah.
And thank you for the conversation. I think this is a great way of bringing knowledge and experiences to people, and I hope this goes a long way.
Thank you for joining me in this conversation, and to all the listeners, do reach out to us and tell us how we can support you furthermore. And as always, comment in the comment section so that we can help you guys out in one way or another. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Karl.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of The Authority Show. Don't let the inspiration and ideas stop here, but join our community and continue the conversation. Learn more at karlillrud.com. That's KarLillrud.com. Be sure to subscribe to catch our next episodes. Until next time, stay curious.